In this, in this last session, I'd like to again begin with a meditation, and I'd like to continue the practice we did in the last session, that is the shamatha practice of resting in awareness itself. Just one or 2 points before we start the meditation. So remember, like any shamatha practice, the two imbalances are agitation, distraction, and dullness. So in this practice, if we find ourselves agitated and distracted, then to release awareness, release all appearances, relax completely. But what can also be helpful here is to shift your gaze, to lower your gaze. So if you find yourself agitated, distracted, lower the gaze. And likewise, when you find yourself dull and spaced out and blank, not only to sharpen your awareness, but then you can elevate the gaze. So you can adjust the gaze depending on whether you're getting dull or distracted. So that's one thing to add in this practice. And what I'd like to do partway through this meditation is move into Vipassana mode. In fact, part of the Vipassana practice we're going to be doing next year, so this is a little bit of a taster for next year's weekend to investigate the nature of the mind. So we'll do a sort of fairly classic approach, particularly within the Kagyu tradition, in terms of how to do this Vipassana practice of nature of mind. So let's do the practice. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. Relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. And with each out-breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. Through simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. with the eyes at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you. Simply release all appearances, allowing the mind to come to rest, not doing anything at all, simply being present, knowing that you're aware. Getting caught up in any agitation, tension or distraction, lower your gaze, release awareness into space, releasing all appearances and relaxing completely. Or if you're finding that you're falling into dullness or your mind is simply going blank, then raise your gaze and sharpen your focus, knowing that you're aware. Simply resting in awareness itself. Does awareness have a particular location? Is it located somewhere? Don't try to intellectually answer this question, just look. is awareness inside the body. Is awareness inside the head. Is it outside the body? How big is awareness? Is there anything outside of awareness? Now release all questioning and allow the mind to rest. And simply rest in awareness itself. So that was a little taster for the topic for next year, the Vipassana part of the text. So that was a more sort of a classic approach we find within the Kagyu tradition of Mahamudra. So we'll be looking at that, but also in the Vipassana section of the text next year we'll be looking at the sort of a classic approach of how to establish this view of emptiness and how to meditate on this through coming through Lama Tsongkhapa himself. So we'll be looking at both of those approaches in next year in the text. So if we go back into the text, we're down towards the bottom of page 5, and we are down to the quote from a text by Yang Gompa. He was a great Mahamudra meditator. And here he's describing this practice of observing the mind as the shamatha practice. And he says, do not view discursive thoughts as false, and do not intentionally cultivate non-conception. Settle the mind in its natural state and keep a distant watch, and the meditation will arrive at shamatha. So again, in this practice is shamatha practice observing the mind. Thoughts are not problems. Grasping and following thoughts is the problem. So thoughts themselves are not problems, and we're not trying to make the mind still. Simply step, as he says, step back and watch, and then the mind will arrive at shamatha. We'll move through these stages of first a waterfall of thoughts, fast-flowing river of thoughts, slow-moving river, emptying into the still lake. Our mind will become still, and we'll move to shamatha. And then we have down the bottom of page 5 here, we have 6 analogies that were used in early days of Mahamudra in Tibet in terms of how to remind ourselves of how we're really to do this practice of Mahamudra. So he says here, furthermore, if the present day trainees sustain this state by way of 6 methods for settling the mind, they will become kings of this instruction. What are the 6 methods? So here's a quote from a text which says, settle like the sun free from clouds, settle like an eagle soaring in the sky, settle like an ocean-going ship, settle like an infant looking in a temple, settle like the trail of a bird in the sky, settle like spread out matted wool. Through these methods of settling the mind, you will possess the meaning of yoga. So these were often 6 analogies we found in the meditation text to help us, to remind us of how to sustain this practice of observing the mind as a shamatha practice. So the first one says, and the explanation is over the page, on page 6, the first one is, just as the sun free from clouds remains extremely clear and bright, likewise by focusing on the clear light nature of the mind, it is not obscured by conceptions grasping to signs, laxity and excitement and so forth. So grasping to signs is grasping onto things existing independently. The second one is, just as an eagle soars through the sky naturally without much need to flap its wings, so just soaring through the sky gracefully. Similarly, it says, likewise without the mind being excessively tight or excessively loose, just allowing the mind to glide. Sustain this state with sharp clarity and in a relaxed manner without losing mindfulness and introspection. So meaning not to make these just sort of gliding the mind there and not making all this unnecessary adjustments. Just like gliding like an eagle in the practice. Even though a great ocean is buffeted by winds, the waves are not able to disturb a ship even a little. Likewise, when settling the mind on an object, settle without being disturbed at all by coarse discursive thoughts. So again, settling our mind, not allowing it to be caught up or buffeted by or reacting to any sort of thoughts or discursive thoughts coming up in the mind. Like a ship is not moved by waves in the ocean, it remains firm. the fourth one is, just as when an infant looks inside a temple, they do not investigate the fine details of the pictures, but rather they look without distraction at the overall scene. Likewise, when settling the mind on an object, settle it single-pointedly on the object without investigating whether the objects of the five senses that appear are attractive or unattractive, without generating attachment or aversion. So again, just like an infant just looks at the general scene in a temple, doesn't get caught up in all the different aspects. Similarly, we are simply looking at what's happening in the mind without getting caught up in attachment and aversion to pleasant and unpleasant appearances to the mind. And the fifth one, just as there is no trail left by a bird in the sky, likewise settle the mind evenly, so that whenever pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings arise, you don't allow yourself to fall under the influence of any of the three: attachment, aversion, or confusion. So again, just like a bird flies in the sky, doesn't leave any trail behind, simply when we are observing the mind, to not leave any trail of attachment, aversion, and so forth to pleasant and unpleasant experiences. And then the sixth one is, just as when matted wool is spread out, it becomes soft and pliable, likewise when settling the mind evenly, it becomes free from the coarse contact of the manifest three poisons, laxity and excitement. So again, the analogy is that just like cotton wool, when it's spread out, it becomes very soft and pliable. Likewise, when the mind is spread out from agitation and tension, it becomes very soft and pliable and free of any of the reactions of the three poisons of attachment, aversion, laxity and excitement. So these are 6 analogies that you often find in the oral Mahamudra tradition to help us to understand how to sustain our practice. And then if we continue on, it says, through sustaining this state in that way, what kinds of marks of achievement will be seen? So again, if we sustain this state, this balanced state, not reacting, not getting caught up in appearances, not suppressing, simply observing this, we're moving through these stages of waterfall, fast-flowing river, slow-moving river, slowly moving into the still lake. So here it says then, as we go deeper into the practice, it says the nature of meditative equipoise. So meditative equipoise means balance. It means that mind now is becoming balanced, free of agitation and dullness, more even and balanced and clear. So it says the nature of that is that it's lucid and extremely clear, that our mind becomes more and more clear, not obscured by anything at all, and since it is not established in any way as a physical entity, it is a pure vacuity like space. So again, what we notice is that when the mind settles down, becomes very clear, and becomes still, it's this experience of stillness, this pure vacuity, this vacuity here meaning absence, this space. And the example often here is given like space. Moreover, whichever of the good or bad objects of the 5 senses that appear, they dawn vividly, just like reflections in a clear mirror. Meaning that when our mind becomes very clear, then whatever appears to the mind, it will appear very vivid and clear. And the experience that dawns is free of identification such it is this or it is not this. So when we're resting in that stillness of awareness, we're free of this is the mind, this is it. Because that mind is this clear space. It's not a thing. It's not this, it's not that. And then it says here, no matter how stable such concentration may be, if it is not imbued with the bliss of physical and mental pliancy, it is merely a single-pointed mind of the desire realm. Whereas concentration that is so imbued is said to be the mind of shamatha. So if we look then how to explain that, we look at the shamatha chart, the standard 9-stage model, where, remember, we're moving through these 9 stages, overcoming the 5 faults with the 8 antidotes. And we're moving through these stages, and then shamatha is the diagram in the middle at the top. And shamatha is, again, as the text said, is that until we have this pliancy of body and mind, we haven't achieved shamatha yet. So we still are in one of the lower stages, even up to the 9th stage. So it's when we achieve this pliancy of body and mind that we move to shamatha. And remember, pliancy of body and mind is flexibility or serviceability of body and mind. So when we achieve this pliancy of body, it's said that our body feels light like cotton. And that's symbolized here by the person flying through the sky. The body feels buoyant and light. And then mental pliancy means that our mind is now very flexible and serviceable, which means we can turn our mind to whatever we want without any resistance whatsoever. And that's symbolized by the person riding on the elephant of the mind. We can turn our mind wherever we want without any resistance whatsoever. So to have a look at this transition to shamatha, I'd like to read again from this Attention Revolution by Alan Wallace, because I think he describes this transition to shamatha, this pliancy, very well. So this is on page 155 of his Attention Revolution. He says the following. Following the realization of the 9th attentional balance, that's the where the meditator is with the elephant of the mind in the cave here, you are primed to achieve shamatha. The 9 preceding stages entail many incremental changes, but the actual accomplishment of shamatha involves a radical transition in your body and mind. You will be like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. This shift is characterized by specific experiences that take place within a discrete, relatively brief period of time. According to accounts from the Indo-Tibetan tradition of Buddhism, the first sign of the achievement of shamatha is the experience of a sense of heaviness and numbness on the top of the head. This allegedly happens to anyone who experiences this transition, regardless of the specific method followed. It is said to feel as if a palm were being placed on the top of your head. It is not unpleasant or harmful, just unusual.